News time, 9 o'clock.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees, 7 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It's an effort to raise awareness on the need for accountability of elected officials and women's safety in politics. A rally and bra hanging ceremony is going to be held outside Ben Franklin Place at noon hour today. Organizers of this event are also encouraging people right across the province to do the same thing at municipal buildings in their area. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Organizers say the bra hanging is inspired by Councillor Rick Shirelli reportedly asking employees and interview candidates to go braless. Former Shirelli employee Stephanie Dobbs is among those speaking at today's rally. She tells City News there is a sense of inequality surrounding issues such as this.
There are being penalties for financial impropriety, and there's consequences for that, but by comparison, penalties for mistreating human beings, it's not the same. So it kind of makes you feel like you have less value.
With both the provincial and municipal election on the horizon, Dobbs is hoping a candidate takes on these issues since she finds the lack of standard community leaders are held to upsetting. The rally outside Ben Franklin Place is set to begin today at noon. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
No weather concerns for us today. We're in for a lovely day, lots of sunshine, the high 18 degrees. Tonight partly cloudy down to 6, and tomorrow sun and cloud about 17. 17 is the average high. For today, the high 18.
And right now it's 8 degrees in Ottawa, 7 degrees in Smiths Falls. It's day 2 of the provincial election campaign, and again the focus will be on provincial announcements in and around Toronto. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
The Conservative, Liberal and NDP campaign buses will be rolling into stops in the GTA primarily today. The Conservative leader, Doug Ford, will be making an announcement in Pickering. NDP leader Andrea Horwath discussing health care in Toronto. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca making a platform announcement in Woodbridge this morning. Green Party leader Mike Schreiner is going to concentrate his efforts in Guelph and Waterloo region today. Yesterday, the frontrunners took shots at each other over plans for the 413 proposed highway. As well, Conservative leader Doug Ford holding a campaign kickoff rally at one of his favorite venues, the International Centre out near the airport in Etobicoke. Kevin Meisner, City News.
City News time 9:02. A 50-year-old man is missing in the Smiths Falls area. Town police say John Moulton of Perth has not been seen since last Friday, and that was in Smiths Falls. John is described as 5 feet 8 inches tall with a shaved head and a salt and pepper beard. He does use crutches after a leg amputation. Police say he's known to hitchhike between Smiths Falls, Brockville, Gananoque, and Kingston. Anyone with any information on his whereabouts is asked to contact Smiths Falls Police. The price of gasoline is expected to climb once again at midnight tonight. The climb expected to be another 4 cents a litre, so approaching $1.95. Some analysts say that is on pace to top $2 a litre, and that is expected to happen in just over 2 weeks' time during the May 2-4 weekend. 10 weeks into a devastating war, Ukrainian and Russian forces fighting village by village, Moscow struggles to gain momentum in Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland of Donbass. Russia switched its focus to that region, where Moscow-backed separatists have fought Ukrainian forces for years. Now, the president of Belarus says he didn't expect the Russian offensive to, quote, drag on this way, but has publicly supported the operation when Russian troops used his country as a launch pad for the invasion back on February 24th. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hey, happy Cinco de Mayo. I read yesterday Cinco de Mayo now rivals the Super Bowl for beer sales in the United States. Cheers. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Great looking weather today. Great looking weather forecast. Highs in the 20s. All next week, highs in the 20s. Will I even see David next week, or will he be on the golf course all next week? Maybe they even say maybe a chance of a 30-degree day next week. Last time we had a 30-degree day was August 26th of last year. That's 8 months ago. Coming up, the Ontario election campaign, day 2. That's going to take up a lot of our first hour here on the Rob Snow Show. Just a few minutes from now, author and columnist Randall Denley is going to join us. Randall is actually headed to the EY Center this morning. Randall has a new book out, just released, the latest in his Chris Redner series. Great series of books. Love that Chris Redner character. This book is set in Ottawa. Makes it a lot of fun for local readers to have a mystery novel set in your hometown. And he will be signing copies of his book today at the Signature Show, which is happening starting today at the EY Center. But Randall, is here every week, and we talk about provincial politics. He covers the Ontario government for Post Media, writes columns for the National Post, and it's election time, so it's perfect timing. 28 days to go until Election Day, June 2nd. So far, it's been the battle of Highway 413. Doug Ford's line yesterday was, "It's time to get paving." I don't think I've ever heard a politician say that. It's time to get paving. Meantime, the Liberal leader, Stephen Del Duca, said, "I will cancel Highway 413 and I will put whatever money was going to be spent on Highway 413 into schools, building new schools, fixing up existing schools." And Andrea Horwath, this is her 4th election campaign. She says her party is the only party that can beat Doug Ford. And if you want to see the end of Ford Nation, you have to vote for the NDP. So all 3 leaders are doing events this morning. The Liberal leader, Stephen Del Duca, in his Vaughan area, riding in Woodbridge this morning. He's just arrived there, we're told. Buck a ride on public transit. That's what his event is about. Buck a ride, vote Liberal, ride public transit for a buck. He hasn't said where the money's coming from or how he's going to pay for that. Transit fares in this city just went up again by another 2.5%. And ridership at OC Transpo, is still way down because, we're a government town and a lot of public servants are still working from home. They never go back to the office. And we know that's already causing a major cash crunch for OC Transpo. So where's the money going to come from if OC Transpo has to knock fares down to $1? I looked up the cash fare this morning for OC Transpo, $3.75. So, yeah, you would save a lot of money. But he is supposed to expand on that announcement this morning. Is he speaking yet, David? He is. So let's have a listen. Stephen Del Duca, the Liberal leader, live on City News.
To live in after getting married and to raise our kids in. And speaking of our kids, of course, we just dropped them off at school a short while ago. As many of you have heard me say repeatedly, our daughters attend publicly funded schools right here in Woodbridge. Talia, our older daughter, in grade 9, Grace, our younger daughter, in grade 5. And so that's why today's announcement is so very important to me, and it's important to Talia, and it's important to Ontario Liberals, because getting publicly funded education right, making the right kind of investment in our schools to set all of our kids and our frontline education workers up for success is one of the most important responsibilities that an Ontario Premier has. And frankly, we've seen over the past 4 years, both before the pandemic struck and then during the pandemic, that the Ford Conservatives simply don't get it. You'll all remember the strife that we saw, the disruptions that we saw in our schools across this province prior to the pandemic, when Doug Ford and his team decided to come out with mandatory online classes, growing class sizes.
All right. So it's not public transit, it's public education. Smaller class sizes. Okay. I was misled. All right. Whatever. Instead of buck a ride, though, I could go for buck a liter. Hearing Andrew's news, holy smokes, $1.95 a liter. How about buck a liter? If Stephen Del Duca makes it a buck a liter for gas, even I might vote Liberal. Andrea Horwath event, 9:30 this morning in Toronto. It just says healthcare-related announcement. Expanding healthcare. We await the details. And Doug Ford is in Pickering today. Don't have any idea what that's about. All it says is Doug Ford will make an announcement in Pickering at 9:30. Hey, how about $1 a liter, Doug? Could you do that for a fella? Like we did yesterday, like we just did. If we get an audio feed of these events, we want to bring them to you because it's election time. We want to hear what the leaders are promising. 2 days in, none of them have left the Greater Toronto area 2 days in. New poll out, Ontario Politics, new poll out from Leger, and it says PCs 36, Liberals 29, NDP 25, Greens at 5, New Blue 2, other parties 3. So it's a 7-point lead for the Doug Ford PCs. But the last time Leger polled on Ontario Politics, the Ford PCs had a 14-point lead. So a 14-point lead has become a 7-point lead in about a month. Over at iPolitics, where Main Street is polling, and we had Keto Maggie on from Main Street earlier this week, they have it looking like this morning. PCs 37, Liberals 27, NDP 25. And the seat projection has the Ford PCs winning 72 seats, which would be more than enough for a majority government. The NDP would remain the official opposition. The Liberals would finish third. Hey, but there's a long way to go, right? A lot can change between now and then. So, again, Randall Denley to help us with all of this coming up in just a few minutes from now. And then Ontario Politics this week with our regular contributors, Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander, right after the 9:30 news. Also on the show this morning, we have a better idea of what higher interest rates can do to the housing market. Sales softening. According to the latest numbers from the Ottawa Real Estate Board, the April numbers, sales down 23% compared to April of last year. Condo sales down 23%. Average sale price for a condo, $437,700, up 11% year over year. The average sale price for a residential class property, which is basically everything else, not including condos, $829,318. Still mind-bogglingly high, up 12% from a year ago. There is still, according to the Ottawa Real Estate Board, there is still limited supply and high demand. And it also says if you use MLS to find a rental unit, which I have never done, but I guess some people do, use MLS to find a rental, average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Ottawa last month, $1,850. Sound about right, David? $1,850 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. My goodness gracious.
Yep.
Holy smokes. Average two-bedroom, $2,200 a month.
Ouch.
And, oh, man. 3 to 4% higher than last year. The rent is too darn high. We're going to get a feel for the real estate market this morning. Our guest, the president of the Ottawa Real Estate Board, at 11 o'clock. We will also take a look at international news this morning at 11:30. It's The World with Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow, Norman Patterson School, International Affairs, Carleton University. He will offer his insight into the latest developments in the war in Ukraine. There's a resolution being proposed in the U.S. Congress. If passed, it would see American forces in Ukraine. Think boots on the ground if Russia uses chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. And Canada is being encouraged to support that resolution, which means, I assume, take the same course of action. Canadian forces, boots on the ground. If Russia crosses that red line and uses chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So we're going to ask the professor about that. As well, our embassy in Ukraine was closed. And it reopened not in Ukraine, but in Poland. Some countries earlier in the war did the same thing. They closed their embassies. But they've since reopened in Ukraine. Canada has not reopened its embassy in Kiev and is not saying when it will. We'll ask the professor what he thinks Canada should do, and we'll talk about the U.S. political situation right now with the leaking of the draft ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court on Roe v. Wade. And the Talkback Hour is coming up between 10 and 11 o'clock, 750-1310, 750-1310. Serious topic today. MAID, medical assistance in dying. It's been legal in Canada since 2016. Major changes to the law made a few years later, more changes coming into effect less than a year from now. But there have been some troubling news stories recently about people seeking medical assistance in dying, not because they have a terminal illness, but rather because they are living in poverty, falling further behind, and they feel they have no quality of life. I know it's not the cheeriest of topics, but it is serious news. And we like to talk about the news around here and get your views on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Dear one, we've been waiting for you. And oh, we're thrilled. Beside ourselves, you arrived. And white coats came in heads held low. And they talked for a bit, shuffle outside. Close the curtains, held each other, and we cried and said hello at the same time as we said goodbye. Smallest and wingless, oh, leaving as soon as you'd arrive. Sadness is love wasted, no little heart to place it inside. Close the curtains and held each other and cried. I said hello at the same time as we closed the curtains and held each other and we cried. We said hello at the same time as we said goodbye.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's day 2 of the Ontario election campaign. We're going to talk about that with our weekly contributor from Post Media, covers the Ford government for Post Media. Randall Denley is back with us. Good morning, Randall.
Morning, Rob.
But before we get into the politics of the day, you will be at the EY Center today for the Signatures Original Spring Craft Sale because you have a new book. Tell us all about it.
I do, Rob. It just got here. It's called The Long Hurt. This is the 4th book in my Chris Redner mystery series. And in this one, an Ottawa tech titan has gone missing, and so has $10 million of his partner's money. His young new wife comes to Chris Redner and her investigative partner and says she's desperate to find her husband. But is she? It's a very Ottawa book. It's all set here. People are going to see a lot of familiar things that they see in their everyday life. So I'm hoping it does well, obviously, and it follows on my previous book, Payback. So I'm going to be at the UI Center, which opens this morning at 10 and it runs through Sunday. It's always a good place to meet people and sell books, so I'm hoping to see lots of readers out.
Excellent. And good luck with the book. I love that Chris Redner character that you have. Yeah, lots of fun, and it's an Ottawa book. So, if you're from Ottawa and you're reading kind of this crime / mystery series, it's neat because you know the places that they're talking about. It's just kind of an added joy, and you've really got a winner on your hands there, Randall. And I wish you nothing but success with it. So again, EY Center starting. You said today at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
10 o'clock. All right. Let's talk some politics. Ontario election campaign underway. Your column in the National Post this week. Here's what the three main party leaders have to do if they want to be premier. If you're Doug Ford, remain premier. Let's start with Ford. He's the front runner according to all the polls. Cruising to a majority victory, really, according to most of the polls. What does he have to do to bring his PC party across the finish line?
I think he just has to stick with the plan that they've put out, which is a solid one that touches on a lot of points of building things, jobs, the economy, affordability, healthcare. They've got all the major stuff covered. What he needs to avoid doing, I think, Rob, is getting too tangled up in talking about highways. They kind of put highways in the front window here because, highways, voters in the GTA 905, they want more highways, he thinks, and they probably do. So let's talk highways. He's actually spending 6 times as much on transit as he is on building highways. But you saw Del Duca yesterday, the Liberal leader, jumped in and said, I'm going to cancel that highway. And it might cost $10 billion, so I'm going to spend $10 billion more on fixing up schools. And there's already money for that, but he's going to lob another $10 billion in because, it'll come from somewhere and he'll do something with it. It's a simple and probably simplistic idea, but it'll sound better to a lot of people than building a highway that isn't in their area. Mm-hmm. Like if you ask somebody in Ottawa, what would you rather do, build a highway near Toronto or spend money in your local school? It's kind of an easy one. So I thought that was actually a smart play by the Liberals. It's hardly his most important point, and it's clear that they're going to go after that. So he just can't get tangled up, and needs to keep reminding people that really jobs in the economy is their big push.
Right. And remind people in Toronto, they're putting billions and billions and billions of dollars into transit. I mean, the Ontario line, just alone in the Toronto areas. Yeah, it's $28 billion. $28 billion project.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge amount of money. It's certainly a contrast to what we see in Ottawa, where we're supposed to pony up our third, which is always more than a third in the end, and they still, the other governments talk like they're doing us a huge favor by picking up a third, more or less, each. Except in Toronto, it's like, what do you need? We'll build it. It's shows their political weight versus ours, no doubt.
Yeah. Okay. So let's turn to the opposition a little bit more here. Andrea Horwath is the leader of the opposition. You and I have both remarked in the run-up to this election, you would think if the NDP was going to win any election, it would have been the last election, which was really the change election. They didn't change the leader. This is Andrea Horwath's 4th campaign. You'd have to think there won't be a 5th. You never know, I guess, but hard to see how that would happen. She said yesterday, we're the best party positioned to defeat the Progressive Conservatives. We can beat Doug Ford, but what do you think?
I don't think so. I think she's going to come third. Personally, the problem that Horwath faces is that people have said no 3 times. So what's new? What's different? Why would they choose her this time? She couldn't win the last time when you had a government that was going to go down in an historic collapse, and from the left side of things. So she couldn't win that. I mean, the Ford government has done a pretty solid job. Not everybody likes Ford, not everybody likes PCs, but they haven't done a terrible job. So tougher to beat than the last time. And their platforms, it's mostly the usual things you'd expect from the NDP, more of everything, talking for the little guy, all that kind of stuff. But the other parties are doing that too. So what do you get that's different with Andrea Horwath? You know, her slogan is, they broke it, we'll fix it. Why do we think the NDP could fix anything? Because they've been out of power for so long. It's not like they have some proven record of competence. You know, just let the NDP take the reins. Everything will be under control then. I mean, who really thinks that? So I think she's in a tough spot.
Okay, I've always looked at Stephen Del Duca's project as Liberal leader as it has to be a 2-election project, and this is election number 1 for him. And I think your advice is bang on for him. Don't finish third. Don't finish third. You know, try to get back to at least the official opposition, right? I think that's a real...
Yeah, he has to accomplish that goal, I think, or else they're going to start looking for somebody else, because it... You know, if you're a Liberal supporter, 15 years in government, you're used to running the problems of Ontario. You know, our people run it. We're the ones. So, okay, we lost the last election, been in power a long time. But if you finish third again, then people say, well, where are we really going? You know, like, what is the Liberal Party about? Why are we different than the NDP or the Conservatives? And, you know, so far I found his policies to be kind of all over the place, probably trying to outbid the NDP by spending more money on things, probably trying to find some kind of novelty like the bucket bus plan that he proposed. You know, we're going to subsidize transit fares this year and next, so everybody ride for $1. I don't think the problem with transit is that the fares are too high. It's that people don't need it right now because they're not going downtown to work, either here or in Toronto, in anything like the numbers that they did. You know, they give the example and say, well, hey, somebody from Oakville get on the GO train and go to a Jays game and save $20 this way. I think, why would I want to subsidize that? Yeah, some guy can go to the Jays game cheaper. You know, I'm sitting here in Ottawa thinking, okay, so how is that really contributing to the public good? It's part of a climate change plan that he has, though, and they're clearly hoping both the NDP and the Liberals to fight some kind of climate change election. So I'm not sure that's going to happen, but it's one of their hopes.
You know, it's so difficult for Del Duca, as it is for all the opposition parties, you know, trying to get themselves identified, because COVID was dominated by the leaders, because they were the ones calling the shots. So I can understand that struggle. The series of ads, though, that Del Duca is doing, you know, meet Stephen Del Duca, here's this nice family, this is his background, you know, these meet Stephen Del Duca ads, to me, these are the kinds of, they should have been doing this a year ago, not in the 29 days of the campaign.
Yeah, and they probably didn't have the money to do it, I think, but you're absolutely right. It's a little late to meet him now. PCs back in the day did the same thing with, you know, Tim Hudak. You don't know anything about him, but let us try to define, here's his family, here's all this stuff. It's like, okay, he's a guy, he lives in the suburbs, and he's got a family. It doesn't exactly make him unique or someone to say, well, he should be the next Premier of Ontario then. I mean, they're trying to put a positive spin on the guy. He's a policy wonk, I guess, which isn't very appealing to people, generally speaking. He may be a fine Liberal leader. I really don't know, because he hasn't really had a chance to show anything because he hasn't had a seat. So
yeah, well,
I think he's in a very difficult position. And to me, one of the biggest problems he's got is that they've only got 7 seats. You kind of don't see it so much in Ottawa because so many other seats are here. But
yeah,
so you've got a whole team of rookies out there, haven't been elected to anything, and they're trying to sell people on something, and the Liberals haven't put out a platform yet.
Yeah.
So it just seems to me that their campaign management so far hasn't been great.
And I mean, we could wrap up on this point. He'll be lucky if he wins his own seat.
Well, that's a challenge.
He lost by
8,000.
8,000. He lost by 8,000 votes the last time. So
yeah. And it's not like his party's going to be in a great position post-election where, we got 70 seats, so we'll find a safe one for the minute the leader. Somebody will step aside. They're not going to have that luxury, so he's got to win that seat, which means he has to spend some time knocking on doors in his own riding.
All right. Again, if you want to get a signed copy of Randall Denley's latest book, just make your way to the EY Center sometime after 10 o'clock this morning, and you'll find Randall down there somewhere.
Booth 606.
Booth 606. Okay. Look, enjoy the book signing. Have a great time with that, Randall, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 9. Here's what's making news this hour. Latest from the campaign trail comes from the Liberal leader, Stephen Del Duca. Under a provincial government with him as premier, class sizes would be capped at 20 in every elementary school. That will require more teachers, the Grit's promising to hire another 10,000. Del Duca says there is a great pool to draw from to fill the positions, recruiting from other provinces or using some of the estimated 80,000 certified teachers who are not currently practicing that profession in Ontario. In an effort to raise awareness on the need for accountability of elected officials and women's safety in politics, a rally and bra hanging will be held outside Ben Franklin Place over the noon hour. Organizers of the event are also encouraging Ontarians to hang bras outside their local municipal buildings in support. 5 of the 6 candidates vying for Tory leadership will be on stage tonight. It's an unofficial debate. The event hosted by the Canada Strong and Free Network, part of their annual conference. Next week, though, all 6 candidates have to take part in the first of 2 official debates organized by the Conservative Party. City News Time, 9:34. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time for Ontario politics this week. Lindsay Maskell is back, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay Maskell.
Good morning, Rob.
Andrew Brander, Vice President, Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Andrew. Here we go. Campaign into its second day. We just heard an event, Stephen Del Duca on his home turf, Woodbridge, Vaughan area, making an educated-related announcement. I thought it was going to be about Buck a Ride, but Buck a Ride is later in the day for Del Duca. I'm just noticing he'll be at the Lawrence TTC station to make an announcement about Buck a Ride. The Buck a Ride promise. I go for a buck a liter, but Buck a Ride, okay? But the education announcement goes like this. Cap class sizes at 20, hire 10,000 teachers, 6,500 in elementary, 3,500 in secondary school, 0 school closures under a Liberal government, and 10,000 teachers would cost $10 billion. No timeline released. So any moment now, we expect to hear from Andrea Horwath having an announcement this morning in Toronto about health care, and Doug Ford is in Pickering this morning, and we don't know what that announcement is about. It's a secret. So we're only 2 days into it here. This is the second day. What have you thought of the messaging so far? Yesterday, Andrew, it was all about Highway 413. Doug Ford used the backdrop of Highway 413 near Brampton, where they would build part of Highway 413 in Brampton, and said, it's time to get paving, which I've never heard a politician say, but it's time to get paving. Stephen Del Duca said, I will cancel that highway and I'll put the money into fixing up schools and building new schools. Well, Andrea Horwath's pitch was, we're your best shot to get rid of the Ford government. What have you thought of the messaging so far 2 days in? Andrew?
Yeah, he just small correction, he used the backdrop of Highway 410. Of course, 413 doesn't exist yet.
Yes. Okay, sorry. All right.
But look,
let's
full
get paving
disclosure up front. I think I've mentioned this. Helping my friend Graham McGregor, Premier, made the announcement in his riding. So look, this is a huge announcement for Brampton, and when you're mentioning all the places the leaders are going, I think it's important to note, this really speaks to where the leaders are trying to find gains. And for Ford to pick Brampton as the first day to make his announcement, the Tories only hold 2 of the 5 seats there. They're extremely bullish on picking up more. But I actually don't really want to spend a huge amount of time talking about that Ford announcement, simply because, I mean, it's quite boring, to be honest. We've talked about it on the show.
Okay, all right.
There's nothing new to see here.
I can either have a school or I can have a highway, Andrew. What do I want?
But so I think that is a fundamental choice and contrast that I know the PCs want to be fighting on in terms of where they're positioning from. I'm not sure it's somewhere where the Liberals really want to be fighting on, because of course when you come out as a party who is opposing highways, you're lumping yourselves in again with the NDP, and I think what we're seeing from the Liberals in the last few weeks has been this evolution, right, where Del Duca has spent a year coming to the table trying to put forward some pretty centrist policies, and that didn't work. The needle didn't move. So now they're forced to retreat to default positions where they're making announcements that are structured to woo the union, make this a urban versus rural battle, and you're seeing that in policies, not only in this contrast that he's saying it's one or the other. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. You can have more than one thing, but it's about priorities, and you're seeing the priorities of the Liberal leader through these announcements. Buck a Ride, their position on being anti-highway, the gun issue, the racism policing task force. These are not policies designed to win votes from the government. These are policies designed to wedge and try to eliminate the threat of the NDP.
Okay. All right. What do you think of that analysis, Lindsay?
Well, I understand why Andrew doesn't want to talk about the highway, because I just can't believe that the Premier spent the first day of the election talking about a highway that advantages just such a small number of people that want to drive from Vaughan to Brampton through a green belt, right? So it is.
Let's get paving.
It is a small, it is a small number of people that would be daily commuters on this highway for such a big ticket item that is opposed by every single mayor in the region that it affects. So that is a pretty narrow statement of who he wants to serve heading in on the first day of the election, particularly when it really does serve the people who want their property bought out, the golf course, some development lands. It's a very narrow day one announcement to kick off an election. So that's really quite surprising. The other thing is, Andrew, it's not fair to say like there's no opposition to this highway. The government is in the business of roads and maintenance and having to keep up all of the different ways that Ontarians get around. But this has been so focused on one $10 billion highway that really we could do all kinds of other roads improvements, improve public transit, increase access to public transit by buck a ride to help get 400,000 cars off the road. That would make people's commute easier. So there is a definite contrast.
Sure. The election is all about contrast. So we heard a little bit from Stephen Del Duca on education. Doug Ford speaking now in Pickering.
Into the skilled trades.
Skilled trades.
It means keeping our province and our economy open today and in the future.
These are webcasts.
And it also means giving people a break, helping Ontario families keep costs down and putting more money back into your pocket.
We got to fire the person from the Ford News Network. That's what we have to do. Get rid of that person. Okay. All right. What do you think then? Let's pick up. We'll see if we can clear that up. This narrative that's out there, the Liberals and the NDP, we had Darryl Bricker on from Ipsos. He says this is what's going on. They're in a primary right now, and they're fighting it out to see who's going to be the flag bearer, if you will, for the anti-PC universe. What do you think about that, Andrew? It's a primary right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of mentioned, I think at least the NDP and the Liberals are spending their time trying to spend the first bit of the campaign convincing Ontarians that they are the choice, the alternative. But so I mentioned if you dig a bit deeper in terms of where the leaders are spending their time, you can actually tell a little bit more about what campaigns think about their prospects, right? As I said, Ford going yesterday to a region where Tories only hold 2 of the 5 seats. They're looking for gains. Andrea Horwath yesterday in the finance minister's riding. Pickering almost never has elected. They have never elected an NDP MPP. Del Duca spending his morning today in Woodbridge. Also not a riding, obviously, that they hold, but it's one he's running in. So to me, that comes across a little bit as a sort of save the furniture approach in terms of his approach to riding. But the Liberals and the NDP really, continue to engage in this sort of vicious battle to present themselves as the alternative. And it's really an actual serious question in terms of where that support's going to end up coalescing, because I do think it's gonna break one way or another. I think it is a really big problem though for Del Duca's prospects. After the election, because I don't think he'll necessarily have to worry about being replaced because expectations are so low. But the way he's approached this in terms of his shift on policy now, he's gone from that record as being sort of a blue suburban liberal in Kathleen Wynne's cabinet to now this social warrior that outflanks Andrea on the left.
All right. Let's hear from Lindsay on that. Let's hear from Lindsay. Lindsay knows Stephen Del Duca. Lindsay knows Stephen.
That is quite the narrative.
Okay.
Also, the leaders all day in Conservative ridings with a barbecue meet and greet in Conservative riding in Mississauga tonight. So you can read what you would like into that, Andrew, but he's all day in Conservative ridings.
His riding's held by a Conservative, to be fair. But
yeah, it is currently.
No, but is he taking the Liberal Party further to the left, kind of like what you're doing? Let's go further to the left. Let's basically envelop the NDP, make the NDP inconsequential. We'll grab all those NDP supporters, make them Liberal supporters.
We have to remember that 2018 election was also, an anybody but campaign.
Yeah.
And you have seen in the federal election that in the ridings held by the NDP in Ontario, that the NDP came in third in those ridings. That vote has collapsed. They are currently in third place. Polling has them anywhere between 6 and 9 points back from the Liberals at the starting line. I don't think that investing in public transit affordability items and schools is outflanking on the left. It is everyday needs for Ontarian families. So there has been no announcement that sounds like it was something that you would be only hearing on the far left of the NDP. So it is exactly in the position to be in, and we've seen the NDP, in polling, seen them collapse a little bit in the last 2 weeks heading into the writ, as people are starting to turn their mind to this. So there is going to be a two-way race, and the starting line has that already shaping up.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk about what's the big issue. COVID-19, cost of living. Not much about COVID-19, really, in this first 2 days of this election campaign. It's not even an issue. Cost of living, that's another matter. And we'll talk about some of the Ottawa area battlegrounds with Andrew and Lindsay here on Ontario Politics this week on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's so important, and I know I do come on and I talk about this a lot, but every 60 seconds somebody in Canada needs blood, and so it's important to keep reinstilling the message of donating and continuing to get new blood donors to come into our system to support. We have 1 in 2 Canadians who are in need of blood at any given time, but only 1 in 81 people actually donate. So we need to improve those statistics.
Yeah, and helping to improve those statistics, you guys are always coming up with new campaigns, and you've got a new campaign now. Tell me about the campaign.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm happy to. It's kind of about Canadians. We sacrifice everything for people we know and for people we don't. Canadians show up for other Canadians, and we do this out of the goodness of our heart. And right now, especially right now, through the pandemic and, the winter months and the snowstorms, we've had a lot of canceled appointments. We've had, a decline in the number of people who are able to show up for their appointments. And right now, what we really need is for everybody who's eligible to hear the call to show up for patients. So patients in Canada need blood. We want you to show up. We want you to say we're here for you. And with currently only 4% of Canadians who donate blood, we want more people to show up and improve those numbers and really make sure that the hospital patients are comfortable and that they know that blood will always be there for them when and where they need it.
Yeah, and Jan, you mentioned the pandemic, right? And that probably, as you said, had it's one of the biggest reasons why people perhaps have stopped. But you do have health and safety protocols, and we want to encourage people and let them know that those health and safety protocols remain in place. Let's talk a little bit about those.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, our workforce, our volunteers, everybody who works within the blood donor clinic is fully vaccinated. And we have many wellness procedures throughout, step by step. If you donated through the pandemic, you'll notice the distancing, you'll notice the wellness stations, the health checks at the front end, some more eligibility criteria, as you can imagine. But all of it is just to make sure that the experience itself is safe and reliable. And now we need people to come in and go through that process with us so that the end outcome, again, is that lovely unit of blood going to a hospital somewhere to help a patient.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, we're back. Ontario politics this week, part 2, day 2, Ontario election campaign, and we have a new attack ad. The Doug Ford PCs have a new attack ad. It goes after Andrea Horwath and the NDP. David.
Andrea Horwath's NDP are out of touch. They fight against building new roads and highways to end gridlock. They oppose building more homes that families can afford. They attack plans to open Ontario and want to keep it locked down forever. Her NDPers protest, criticize, and delay getting things done at every turn because that's what Andrea Horwath demands they do. The NDP would be an expensive disaster for Ontario, just like they always have been. Authorized by the CFO for the
just like they always have been. I love that line. Andrea Horwath would keep Ontario locked down forever. But what's interesting is that they're attacking the NDP and not Del Duca, which makes one think they think the NDP is the bigger threat than the Liberals. What do you think, Andrew?
They are.
Yeah.
Okay. It's what we're seeing everywhere. In terms of the ridings that the Tories are really focused on.
Okay.
And again, that goes back to where the Liberals have sort of defaulted back to a strategy that has them, moving out of that government in waiting to being the credible opposition. And I think they're seeing that too, despite what messages are coming from Lindsay this morning. But I do think that I will note that it still seems extremely volatile, and I do think the biggest problem for all parties, and I know I said this last week, is really going to be voter motivation. Okay. And these type of ads are really not even specifically designed at attacking the NDP. It's about motivating the Conservative base to get out and vote.
Red meat for the masses. All right, Lindsay, just quickly on that.
So nobody wants the NDP to be in a good place more than the Conservatives, right? This is them trying to establish them as the competitor because going in the last 2 weeks, they saw the NDP numbers collapsing in polling really far back, really far back. And a whole bunch of chaos in the NDP local campaigns, people resigning from the party, running as independents, resignations in Brampton, things like that they were just collapsing. So the Conservatives really want to put them into this race to have it be a three-way race. But where we are today, it's not. They are back in their usual third-party position. They've had 4 years. It's her fourth time running. Yep. And they are going to try to prop her up at the beginning of this campaign to make it seem like it's a three-way race.
Okay. All right. That's it. Okay. Interesting. All right. We only have a few minutes left here. All right. Maybe we can just do this bullet point form. I want to talk about some Ottawa area battlegrounds. Lindsay's familiar with all these ridings. She used to work with Dalton. Andrew used to live here. So Ottawa West of Pean to me is really interesting because it's a bellwether, always gone with the winning party. Shirelli had it. Watson had it when Liberals were in power. Guzzo had it when the Mike Harris Conservatives were in power. It's shaping up to be a hard hold for the PCs. Yes? Liberals could take that one. maybe even break the bellwether thing?
Absolutely. Sam is a fantastic local candidate, so well known as a healthcare advocate with CHIO and with seniors groups, and just out there doing a fantastic job. I'm sure it's making them nervous.
Right. Jeremy Roberts in tough there. He's in for a real fight there, Andrew.
Yeah, Jeremy is in for a tough fight. He knows that, and that's why he's not taken anything for granted for every single day over the last 4 years. He's been out working the riding hard. He has a number of sort of local key niche issues that he has been able to claim some victories about, and he's overcome some pretty significant odds before. So I wouldn't count him out. That's for
No. Neither would I. It was a squeaker last time. Ottawa Centre, for years a Liberal stronghold. Think names like Yasser Naqvi, Richard Patton. NDP territory now, but federally just was won by the Liberals again. Joel Harden, the incumbent. Can he repeat? Anybody want to jump in? Anybody?
Well, I think you said it all, Rob, with the fact that, Yasser clearly easily picked that riding back up. It has always been well organized. It is, think about all of the political staffers that live in that riding. Right. Hill. It is definitely a good one for the Liberals.
Good one for the Liberals. Okay.
I just say very quickly, PC candidate there, Scott Healy, working very hard, former Navy officer.
Yep.
Probably not a huge significant chance for him. But what I would say that's interesting about Ottawa Centre, we've seen huge swings in between elections. Unlike Ottawa West Nepean, which is always a bit of a nail biter, very, very drastic swings in terms of support in Ottawa Centre, a little more independent in terms of their approach to voting.
GPR, Glengarry Prescott Russell. Simard won this 4 years ago as a PC, crossed the floor, sat with the Liberals. Could she get reelected as a Liberal?
So remember, this is Jean-Marc Lalonde's seat. This was held by the Liberals for the longest time. This was a real surprise pickup by Amanda in 2018, right? So that was definitely a Liberal seat before, has always been federally, and she moved over, left the Ford government over the Francophone issues, and has been a strong member of the Liberal caucus. Her campaign co-chairs are the former MPP, Liberal MPP, and former MP. They have embraced her, and she's doing a fantastic job.
Well, we'll see. They have the mayor of Alfred and Plantagenet, and he was the warden for GPR for the whole territory there. So it'll be interesting.
Stephen's a great candidate for the PCs. As you said, popular local mayor, which kind of is the composition of about 80% of the new PC candidates this time around. But what I would say is for the Tories, this one is very personal, which means they're going to be putting a lot of resources into the riding.
All right. Okay. All right. We're out of time. Okay, that's it. We still have 4 weeks to go. We can get to all the other ones as the weeks go on. Look, it's a lot of fun. Very feisty this week. I love it. Thank you. We'll speak next week. All the best, everybody. All the best out there. I know you're out there supporting the candidates you love. That's Lindsay Maskell, Liberal, and Andrew Brander, Progressive Conservative, here on our panel. Ontario Politics this week. When we come back, right after the news, a very serious discussion we're going to have about MAID in the Talkback Hour, 750-1310. Rob Stowe Show, City News.
I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3.
Some days I'm on fire. I don't even stop. I don't even drop. I don't even
I think that this is the first time that I have unveiled a set of music that's all new music. I'm usually pulling from some of my older projects like Chameleon and Passing Notes and trying to feature songs from both of those, but the set you're about to hear has been all written within the last year. So I'm really excited to share that with Ottawa and share that with the world.
Sometimes it feels like we're falling when things are falling into.
What does it mean? Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And what it means being in a venue like this for a local artist. I mean, Centrepoint Theatre is premier. I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in, and this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this, and to also have access to an incredible film and audio crew. It's the dream.
I'm too small to house it, and it's not just me.
I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees, 9 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The NDP has kicked off day 2 of the provincial election campaign with a healthcare promise. Andrea Horwath says under her leadership, the province would adopt free or low-cost dental care for low and middle-income people. The party said for an average family of 4, it would mean a savings of $1,240 a year. That would just be for regular checkups. If your household makes under $90,000 a year, your dental bill would be zero. Any family income over that amount, you would pay something on a sliding scale. That initial cost to the province would be $680 million this year, but it would shrink, according to Horwath, to $380 million every year after the federal dental program kicks in. Class size in elementary school would be capped at 20 province-wide in Ontario. That is the latest promise from Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca on the campaign trail today. He admits that would require more teachers, some 10,000 more, but the leader feels there is a vast pool to draw from. There are other provinces you could lure teachers here, other countries, and an estimated 80,000 certified teachers in Ontario currently not working in that profession. City News time, 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A nice sunny stretch for us. A high 18 degrees today. Tonight, partly cloudy down to 6, and tomorrow, sun and clouds 17. For today, the high 18.
And right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 9. Well, the price of the pumps hovering around $1.90 today. It will be higher tomorrow and higher still by the May 2-4 weekend. Here's our senior business editor, Mike Eppel.
The peak price of the pumps will be up to almost $1.96 per liter, going up 5 cents at midnight tonight, according to the forecast from Roger McKnight at Enpro. It follows a consistent climb for oil prices this week and reports of record-breaking exports from North America over to the European Union, trying to wean itself off of Russian oil and gas. And we're also looking at big shipments to Latin America. All of this comes at the same time as peak driving season is coming up with Victoria Day and Memorial Day weekends. And the increase in price doesn't even include today's jump for oil, north of $109 per barrel, with OPEC making very little change to its production quotas. At the City News Business Center, I'm Mike Eppel.
City News time at 10:03. A 50-year-old man missing in the Smiths Falls area. Town police say John Moulton of Perth has not been seen since last Friday in Smiths Falls. He is 5'8", with a shaved head and salt and pepper beard. He uses crutches after a leg amputation, and police say he is known to hitchhike between Smiths Falls Falls, Brockville, Gananoque, and Kingston. Anyone with any information is asked to contact Town Police. Another major purchase for an Ottawa-based company, Shopify, acquiring an American firm in a mega deal that it says will help streamline logistics and simplify steps for merchants.
Ottawa-based Shopify Inc. has announced a deal today to buy logistics company Deliver Inc. in a deal valued at about $2.1 billion U.S. Under the agreement, Shopify will pay about 80% of the purchase price in cash and 20% in Shopify shares. Shopify CEO Toby Lutke says together with Deliver, which ships over 1 million orders a month across the U.S., the deal will strengthen its ability to offer merchants simplified inventory management and fast delivery. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
MAID. Medical assistance in dying. What used to be called doctor-assisted suicide, physician-assisted suicide. Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have access to medical assistance in dying? Anytime, for any reason? Only in cases involving the late stages of a terminal illness, or never? Or never? There's a reason I'm bringing this up today. MAID has been legal in Canada since 2016, but at that time, the original bill said death had to be reasonably foreseeable. Reasonably foreseeable. But then, because of a court ruling in Quebec, the law was amended, and reasonably foreseeable was changed to a state of decline that cannot be relieved under conditions that the person considers acceptable. In March of next year, people suffering from mental illness will be allowed to apply for MAID. I bring this up today because there was a news story recently about a woman who applied for MAID because she's poor and she is poorly housed. She lives, she says, in abject poverty, and she feels she has no quality of life. And her application for MAID was approved. Serious, important topic, because one of the concerns that many people had about MAID was that it would harm the most vulnerable, the poor, the mentally ill, and the elderly. So that's why I'm asking you, under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying? Serious topic, I know. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Look, I thought long and hard about even raising this as an issue with you during the talkback hour because it's not a cheery topic. I get that. It's a heavy-duty topic. But this issue is so serious and the news recently so troubling to me. I seek your help, really, in understanding this very personal and complex issue. And all you have to do to help me is just give me a call and tell me what you think. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Like the big radio voice says, there's no news he won't talk about, like medical assistance in dying. Okay, it's been in the news quite often recently. Troubling news. And I think it's news that raises a whole bunch of ethical questions. And to be frank, they are questions that at one point or another in our own lives, we're going to have to come up with answers. Because either someone we love is going to face this situation, or we will. Or we will. Because none of us is going to live forever. You know, we have 9 million baby boomers now, 9.2 million baby boomers, according to that census data that came out last week. And the oldest of the baby boomers are in their mid-70s now. This issue, medical assistance in dying, already a big issue. And it's going to be even more so in the years ahead. I want to give you the news story that I'm talking about. From Avis Favreau, CTV News, the longtime medical correspondent for CTV News. Okay? Quote, this is from yesterday. This is from yesterday. Quote, a 31-year-old Toronto woman who uses a wheelchair is nearing final approval for a medically assisted death request after a fruitless bid to secure an affordable apartment that doesn't worsen her chronic illnesses. The looming approval for death, surprisingly, makes her grateful. Relieved and elated, Denise said in an interview, I was scared they weren't going to say yes, she said. Denise asked us not to use her real name to protect her identity. She was diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivities, or MCS, which triggers rashes, difficulty breathing, and blinding headaches. Story goes on, quote, she desperately wants to move to an apartment that's wheelchair accessible and has cleaner air, but her only income is Ontario's Disability Support Program, ODSP. She receives a total of $1,169 a month plus $50 for a special diet. I've applied for MAID essentially because of abject poverty, she said. End quote. Abject poverty. She would rather die than live the way she's living now because she's poor and underhoused. And she's thrilled that the request has been granted. Is that what MAID was supposed to be for? People ending their own lives with the help of a medical practitioner with the blessing of the government because they're poor? She needs affordable housing. And more than $1,100 a month on ODSP. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Jen in Ottawa West. Good morning.
Hi there, Rob. I think you hit it right on the nose.
So what do you think? Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying?
So in my job, I work in the community as a PSW, and we've had many people that have used MAID for medical purposes, as they are at the point of their life where there's nothing better coming. There's no more supports. Right. There's pain management, but they just can't get any further in happiness.
Death is reasonably foreseeable. Reasonably foreseeable. Okay.
I think, and I totally agree with it. I've seen the benefits of it.
Right.
I've seen in my own family, actually, we had one of our family members use MAID. When you hear the stories of people using it because they can't get any further in life because of disabilities and the government is failing at them, that's a sad state where we are in.
Yes.
That shouldn't be happening.
No.
Our poverty level is huge in Canada. Our poverty level is not getting any better. Technically, I'm in a poverty level and I work a full-time job. That shouldn't be happening.
Okay.
We shouldn't be living to say, well, you know what? I can't get any further in life. I'm just going to decide I'm going to use MAID and die. That's sad.
But should it be allowed? At some point, somebody has to make a decision.
I think so.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You've got us off to a good start there. Thank you. Serious issue, I know, but I'm glad you've called. Tom in Barhaven. Tom.
Hi there.
Yeah. Hi, Tom. Thank you. You're on City News. Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying?
I think that it shouldn't be anybody else's decision, honestly, besides the person themselves.
Okay.
In this world, you're brought into, the world without your consent, right? I mean, it's not like you consented to be birthed into the world.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't agree with the idea that it should be a foreseeable death. I do understand there's people that have mental issues or are not in the best, personal position in life.
Yeah.
And they may feel like it's inescapable. But I mean, this is like a very wide-ranging issue. It doesn't just apply to people in poverty or mental. There's all kinds of reasons why people, don't want to live necessarily. And I don't view it as like a morbid or like negative thing necessarily. I think it's just a part of life. Like life and death is just a part of the cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But nevertheless, the original legislation in 2016 had a number of safeguards in there. Then they were in there for good reasons. You want people to be lucid, for example, when they make that decision. You want to make sure that they're not coerced into making that decision, say by a relative who looks to gain an inheritance, or a hospital administrator who wants to free up a hospital bed that you may be taking up, right? So
yeah, those double checks should be done. Absolutely. I agree. I agree. But I mean, I think there's a lot of people also who don't want to be a burden later on in life too, that this might apply to. Like, I don't know, people who they know later on down the line, like the mental issue might exist within the family that they might be susceptible to. So they kind of give fair warning that I want it in my life before I become the burden. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like advanced consent, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop here. And there's one line available, 750-1310, and then we'll get to some more calls. We're talking about MAID. Rob Snow Show, City News.
I'm Emily Bertrand, the owner of Royale Equestrian Center. This is Diamond. She's a 10-year-old thoroughbred. She used to be a racehorse and then made the transition to a riding horse. She loves jumping, and she's used for our more advanced students. So we started the farm 14 years ago with my mom and brother. My brother was actually driving by one day and saw the sign, and we applied. There were 60 applicants, and we got it. When we first started, there was not very much here, so our property's about 25 acres, and there was just this 100-year-old barn. And from there, we built onto it. We fixed up one stall at a time, one paddock at a time. We added one horse at a time, and slowly it built into what it is today. Every year, we're improving and trying to continue to build. And most recently, we added 2 shed row barns this year. I love horses. I've been obsessed with horses since I was a little girl. The first time I got to ride, I was 4 years old, and I just loved it. My mom thought it was going to be a phase, and that phase never ended. I kept riding all through high school, and then eventually, started Royale Equestrian Center. It was my dream to always own a farm and to build a place that I could share my passion for horses with others and do the same thing for the kids that the horses did for me. So I absolutely love it. It's a dream come true. COVID hit, that was challenging. I was pretty stressed, especially the first few months, trying to figure out how are we going to navigate all of this. Our business is based on people coming in. We don't make much revenue if there's nobody coming in to ride. So that was really challenging. And then the other aspect of it was how are we going to care for all these horses if we're fully shut down and there's no income coming in. So we worked really hard. Some of our team were so kind to actually just come in and volunteer and help us out. And we made through it. We got through it. It's been hard and a lot of work, but it's also shown us how resilient we can be. So I'm happy with how we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully this is, we're nearing the end of all the shutdowns, but we've, survived it and now we're starting to thrive again, which is great. So we have a great team. We have about 14 coaches, and then we have all our regular barn staff. We have our maintenance manager and crew, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. It takes a huge amount of people, and then we also have a volunteer program. The volunteer program, it helps with us, especially with our beginner program, so they help with tacking up the horses and caring for the horses when we're really busy, and then they also get to gain some work experience. We take co-op students on. We're quite a busy and vibrant place, and it takes a lot of people to make it work, even through to behind the scenes from our accountants, my family, who are always stepping in to help out. It takes a small village.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Talking about medical assistance in dying, doctor-assisted suicide, MAID. Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying? I've talked about a number of, one news story, but there have been a number of others recently that are very troubling about MAID. Here's another one from about a week ago. Quote, police in Abbotsford, BC confirm they are investigating the medically assisted death of a 61-year-old woman whose daughters say should not have been approved for the procedure based on the state of her mental health at the time. Case involves Donna Duncan, a nurse and mother, died October 29th, 2021. A longtime psychiatric nurse, described by her daughters as happy, very enthusiastic about life, but they say despite previous health problems, including breast cancer, she never suffered from anxiety or depression. In February, she was in a car accident. The following day at a walk-in clinic, diagnosed with a concussion. But as COVID-19 restrictions were implemented across Canada, her daughters say her medical care and rehabilitation were curtailed. She complained of headaches, bright lights, difficulty concentrating, watching TV, using a computer. In July, she was identified as having post-concussion syndrome. Her daughters suspect the problems were compounded by stay-at-home orders during the pandemic. She was prescribed medication but rarely took it for long periods. She would try it for a day. It doesn't work. I'm not going to take it. The antidepressants don't work, she would say. So this story goes on. It's quite a long read. But it says, October 2021, she asked a psychiatrist to approve her for a medically assisted death, telling him she had poor quality of life. He declined. In medical notes, he wrote that her mental health needs to be treated, and that she had only tried a couple of anti-anxiety medications, which she discontinued. Several psychiatrists' names were suggested for follow-up care. She ultimately went to BC's Fraser Health to seek MAID. The doctors obtained a court injunction, halting the procedure, were granted a mental health warrant, allowing police to take their mother to the emergency unit at Abbotsford Regional Hospital. During a psychiatric consult, another doctor said he saw no convincing evidence of depression or anxiety, seemed competent to make the choice. She agreed to transfer to another hospital in Chilliwack, telling doctors she was embarrassed about being in Abbotsford because she worked there as a psychiatric nurse. At the second hospital in Chilliwack, doctors again assessed her and determined she was not depressed and cleared as competent. Released from hospital, 4:30 in the afternoon, 9:30 that same night, had a medically assisted death at home. And now the police are investigating. Is this why we have MAID? First story is about a woman who is inadequately housed. This story, the daughters say she did not need MAID. She needed treatment for mental illness, quite likely related to a concussion because of a car accident. Let's take this line. Charlotte Lake. Grace. Good morning, Grace.
Good morning.
Hi, Grace. Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying?
I think it's up to the person. If the person's in sound mind, like myself,
yes,
I'm up in age, and if I cannot look after myself, I've told my family I want it, because I do not want to be a burden to my family.
Okay.
And besides, I could not afford to go to a senior's home.
Okay.
With what I have my income,
right.
And I do not want to burden them with the account, with the money to put their savings into my life, that I've lived a good life.
Okay.
And I have some medical problems right now, but I think it's up to the individual, and if it's your decision to do it, you should have it down in writing and be able to do it the same as you have a living will.
I see. So you should be able to give advanced consent.
I have told them now, if I become, my mind is gone, I do not want to go to a nursing home. I want MAID.
Okay.
And I think, and you have a living will, and I think you should be able to put this the same as a living will.
Okay. In the original law in 2016, it said your death had to be reasonably foreseeable.
Yes, I know that.
Right? In other words, you had to be terminal. Do you think you should have to be in that state?
Yes.
In that state?
But I know now some people that have not been terminal, and they've had it done.
Okay. Can I ask? Yes, because they changed the law.
Yes.
Right? What do you think about someone saying, I'm just too poor. I have no quality of life. I'm just too poor. I'm going to have MAID.
I can see it because right now, I said I'm a senior. There's nothing in the government saying they're going to pay for my dentures.
Right.
It's dental care, but not dentures. And I said it's $5,000. There's nothing in there for somebody that's on a medium income.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have people coming in or you don't have family, I agree with it.
Okay. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you
All
very
the best
much.
to you.
I enjoy your call.
Well,
and
I think
time I've got through, and I'm very happy that I was able to get through.
Well, I appreciate it.
I appreciate
it.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah. Okay. Ian in Brockville, you're on City News. Ian.
Rob, against my better judgment, I'm going to use a very personal example here. Very nice caller there. However, sound mind don't work, because back whenever I was a very unsound mind, any professional could have looked at you and said, no, Ian's just fine. Short as I can make this, I come from a family who is both very good in the brain and very good in the finance department, so my life has been quite easy. My stepfather happens to be one who is very sold on this MAID program, to the extent that when my body has completely left me, that is when I'll use it. I have had my life handed to me. I have worked cross country, getting to the point. I found myself on a bad track in my mid-20s, and Rob, I got to a point in which, thankfully, I had a sound enough mind that I was able to bring myself out of a habit that very few are able to bring themselves out of. But after I got myself out of that habit, Rob, I was a very sober mind, sound not so much. And to anyone who I was around, including my own mother at the time, I could even convince my own birth giver that I was of a sound mind. But I was very much the opposite, because at that point in time, for those who feel this, I do apologize to have to hear me say this, but there are individuals who can drive down a highway and look at trees and hydro poles as they drive down that highway and try to figure out at what speed must we hit that.
Sure.
Now,
Yeah.
to conclude, Rob, if I would have known that I could use my mental health at that point in time to do what we are discussing today, the only thing that sits very heavily on my chest on this conversation this morning is my mom. Because I am now a very, very healthy, very well-sounded, you hear from me all the time.
You recovered it. You recovered.
So what would have happened if MAID would have allowed someone with mental health to do that?
Well, it will. That's a good point. It will. March 17th, 2023, next year, is going to be expanded.
Can you imagine if I would have taken that, right? You wouldn't be talking to me today. I have no time for that, Rob. No, it's such a touchy topic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Dave in the West End. Dave.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Rob. Rob, I think it's the most, what would I say, honorable thing to do.
Okay.
I just had a friend do it.
Yeah.
We used to fight. We used to fight over who was going to die first.
Right.
And he called me an hour before the doctor arrived.
Yeah.
And he declared himself the winner. And I said, come on now.
Yes.
I'm not going to mention his name, but...
No. But if you don't mind, what was his medical state at that point? Was his death reasonably foreseeable, would you say? Was he about to die?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
But it was like they said 6-8 months.
Okay.
And he didn't want to suffer for 8 months.
He didn't want to suffer, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it was the most bravest thing. To me, it's the most bravest thing a person can do. And the law is evolving. Okay?
Yes, it is. But, well, some of us think it's evolving too fast. 7 years. 7 years ago, this was totally banned in Canada.
Yes, it was. Well, you can connect it to one of the other life-threatening things that are happening, too. I won't say what that is. Everybody knows what it is. And so it's a very brave thing.
But what do you think about people who are, like, I'm on ODSP, I'm just so poor, I don't have a good place to live. Like, should that be a reason that you should be able to get assisted suicide?
Yeah, your reason is very, very personal. And I imagine the medical field will... That story you told about the nurse, if anybody knew how wrong it was for her not to do it, it was her.
Okay.
She and her daughters, I know they love her and loved her, but It was none of their business.
Okay. All right, Dave. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for telling the story about your friend. We'll be back after the news. This is City News.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees, 9 degrees in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The NDP has kicked off its election campaign day 2, as have the Liberals. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says his party would cap class sizes in elementary schools at 20. It would also hire 10,000 more teachers. They would be drawn from across the country. And also, Stephen Del Duca says those who are qualified to teach in Ontario but are not currently in that profession. He says there are 80,000 of them. NDP leader Andrea Horwath says there will be a provincial dental care program for low and middle income families. Now, this will cover the cost of a family that makes under $90,000 a year at full cost, then a sliding scale of fees for those families that make over 90. Shopify says it has signed a deal to buy a logistics company from the United States valued at about $2.1 billion. The Ottawa-based company will pay 80% of the purchase price in cash, the rest of it in Shopify stock. War-ravaged Ukraine has received pledges of $6.5 billion more in humanitarian aid. This happened today at an international donors conference in Warsaw. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, Rob Snow Show continues.
Medical assistance in dying, otherwise known as MAID. Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying? Anytime, any reason? Only in cases involving the late stages of terminal illness? Never. MAID has been legal in Canada since 2016. The whole debate about MAID, nothing new in Canada, really. Part of the public dialogue most of my adult life, I'm sure many of you will remember the case of Sue Rodriguez back in the early 1990s. Sue Rodriguez had ALS, and at the time it was illegal to have a doctor help you end your own life, and she challenged that in the courts and took it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and she lost. September of 1993. Supreme Court of Canada ruled at that time that the relevant section of the Criminal Code, 241B, didn't violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And if a doctor helped her commit suicide, the doctor would be breaking the law. Eventually, Sue Rodriguez did end her own life with the help of an anonymous doctor and the then, in the presence of, is how it's been described, then NDP MP Sven Robinson. He was kind of the political champion for her. And that's the way it stayed until another case came before the Supreme Court about 7 years ago, and that case was called Carter v. Canada. And Carter is Lee Carter, daughter of Kay Carter. Her mother was Kay Carter, and Kay Carter wanted to die with dignity. So she went to Switzerland and had a doctor-assisted suicide at a private clinic. And she was joined in the lawsuit by another woman named Gloria Taylor, who also had ALS, and together they challenged the law prohibiting medical assistance in dying. This was back in 2015. Gloria Taylor said she didn't want to live in a bedridden state, stripped of dignity, independence, and the court heard the case, really focused on two sections of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You have Section 7, everyone has the right to life, liberty, security, the person right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance of principles of fundamental justice. And then you have Section 15, which is equality rights. Every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to the equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination. And in particular, discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. In other words, an able-bodied person wouldn't even have to fight in a court for the right to end their own life on their terms. They're just able to do it. Someone with a debilitating disease can't do that. And the case was being made that violates the right to be treated equally under the law and have equal benefit of the law. As for Section 7, some people thought, the right to life, but you want to end your life. So how can you say that violates my right to life? By denying me the right to die on my own terms. The rationale is because of the ban on physician-assisted dying, some people take their own lives prematurely because they are worried that because of their illness, they wouldn't be able to later. They won't have the faculties to do so. And that violates the right to life. I know it seems counterintuitive, but that was the argument. And it was the winning argument. And the ban on doctor-assisted suicide was ruled unconstitutional, and it gave Parliament a year to write a new law, and it did. And that law came into effect in June of 2016. But then it was appealed in Quebec by two individuals who had degenerative illnesses. And while they were not immediately life-threatening, it was seriously eroding their quality of life, debilitating pain on a daily basis. They applied for the right to physician-assisted death, but because the law, the 2016 law, said death had to be reasonably foreseeable, they were denied. And they won in court, again on the same two sections of the Charter, Section 7 and Section 15. So again, Parliament had to come up with a new law. It amended the law. And repealed the requirement that a person's death be reasonably foreseeable. And that was a big change. That language was replaced by serious, incurable illness, disease, or disability, facing an advanced state of decline in capabilities that cannot be reversed, or experiencing unbearable physical or psychological suffering from an illness, disease, disability, or state of decline that cannot be relieved under conditions that the person considers acceptable. But your death did not have to be reasonably foreseeable. And next year, March 17th, 2023, Canadians whose only medical condition is a mental illness, who otherwise meet all the other eligibility criteria, can become eligible for MAID. And the fear is our medical assisted suicide law is becoming too permissive, because in 7 years we'll have gone from a total prohibition to having one of the most accommodative regimes in the world for this. It's unsettling for some. It's unsettling for some. Okay, back to the phones. I wanted to give you a quick kind of briefing on the background there. Liz Metcalf. Liz, good morning.
Well, hi, Rob.
Hi, Liz.
I'm thinking about, I don't know if you ever heard of Dr. Cicely Saunders, but she's the one who started the whole idea of hospice care.
Yeah.
She worked in England during the Second World War.
Okay.
And it ended up coming to Canada. It was called palliative care here.
Palliative care, sure.
But she found, and anybody can look it up, she's written, there's a wonderful biography written about Dr. Cicely Saunders. She found in all the research that she did and all the people she worked with, people did not ask for it, and then it was euthanasia, now you call it MAID, whatever you want to call it. They didn't want it if they had the proper medication and the time of the doctor. And the hospital that she started, she provided a place for the families to be together where the people were wanted. They did not want to die. And I'm a retired social worker, and I attended a euthanasia conference in Montreal there a few years ago. And there was a doctor there from Canada, out west, and she explained how there was a relatively new medication at that time. Now, this is a few years ago, so it's not that new anymore. But there's a medication that was available that can dull the pain without the patient being totally out of it. So we have upgrades like that with medication. People need emotional support, financial help. They need to feel loved. They need proper medication. And like the one fellow, sad story, but luckily he's still alive. People can change their minds.
Yes.
People need help. Like we're becoming this society. We went from the Hippocratic Oath.
This story. We don't know the woman's real name. Her identity's being protected. Has applied for MAID because she says, I'm applying because I live in abject poverty and I have no quality of life.
Yeah, what is
she needs a new apartment. She needs a new apartment.
Yeah.
A better apartment.
Yeah. I mean, what are we doing as a society? Like I said, the Hippocratic Oath, where doctors said we will never give anything to harm anyone, and now they're going to kill people. And you know what? It's going to get worse, Rob, because, I mean, I'm in my 70s now, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper to kill me than it is to keep me in a bed somewhere. But, like, what are we doing as a society? We've lost the whole value of what life really means.
Right. Okay, Liz. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Is it Dina or Dinah?
Yes, it's Dina. Hello, Rob.
Dina, hi, in Stittsville. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. It's just that I agree a lot with what Liz says. It's very, very depressing what I'm listening to. Not because the topic is depressing, but because people are choosing death over life, especially for economical reasons.
Yes.
I mean, and instead of the governments, whether federal or provincial, trying to do something about it, they're making it just easier for themselves by developing a law that will get rid of the problem at the core, just kill the people, let them kill themselves and get it over with. It's absolutely sad. And when you think that doctors are supposed to be there to preserve life, and then now you listen about assisted killing of people or suicide by doctors, what is this? I mean, where are we going? And really, we pay a lot of taxes in Canada. How come we have such poverty, and how come people can't afford a decent living, especially at old age after all the hard work they've done? And just to get rid of them like that, or help them to get rid of the problem by just killing themselves, I mean, this is ridiculous, and it's very, very depressing.
And in the news story from CTV News, the woman says, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to have a medically assisted death.
How sad is that?
I find it thoroughly depressing.
Instead of us giving her a hand and helping her out, I mean,
she needs better housing.
At her age and her economical situation. I mean, will no one help me out after all the work I'm doing, after all the taxes I'm paying? Is this how I'm being paid at the end? That's very, very sad. And to see that people are applauding this law and the developments in this law, even worse.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. Global News did a story last year about a man in Niagara Falls living in terrible conditions in a retirement home. Gosh, pictures of urine and feces in his room. He had a disease called Fabry's disease. He was only 35 years old, but because of his condition, he had to live in a retirement home, assisted living. And he opted for MAID, and his brother thinks he opted for MAID, not because of his health, but because of his living conditions. And this was City News Vancouver. Quote, after 25 years of living with pain, fatigue, and a complex disability, a Vancouver woman says she's run her debt as far as it will go. She says she's facing a painful deterioration, so she's seeking MAID. Madeline, a pseudonym, says she doesn't want to die, but her monthly income, even with temporary COVID-19 era increases, is not enough to keep her in a pain threshold that's bearable. The application for medical assistance in dying already underway. Madeline desperately hopes lifting people with disabilities above the poverty line will happen while she's still alive to benefit from it. Goodness gracious. Mental illness, affordable housing, poverty. Is this why people are being approved for MAID? Simply because they can't afford to live? Michael in Orleans, you're on City News. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Great. Just quickly on the last caller. If you're looking for the government to solve your issues, you're looking in the wrong place. They're not going to solve anything for you. It all comes down to the individual. But for what I called in, just listening to these callers, I think the line has to be drawn at a terminally ill or a terminal illness.
Okay.
Poverty and mental stability or health. It's such a gray area that we would become a society that eradicates the unwanted. And that's the scariest slippery slope I've ever heard. I was going to call in originally before your callers and say, this is such a brave choice for someone who has cultivated an image and a lifestyle for themselves, and they know they're on their way out with a terrible disease. As for the other things, I have to agree with your callers. You cannot go down this slippery slope where it's easier to eradicate yourself and get rid of the ills of society. That's quite a disgusting choice that they would be making. That's it.
So the original, just don't hang up on me, Michael.
Yep, nope,
the original bill in 2016 said a person's natural death must be reasonably foreseeable.
Yes.
Like it was an end-of-life bill.
I agree with that.
You agree with that? And there was also at that time, and they removed this when they amended it, there was a 10-day reflection period.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even part of it anymore.
That's unbelievable. Do you know that just on a complete, if you apply for a long gun license, it's the PAL license.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's a 30-day cooling period? The RCMP doesn't even look at your application.
Oh.
That's for just getting a shotgun to go get some ducks.
Oh, okay.
This is your life.
Yeah.
And they've taken away a cooling period. I think the way the law changed 7 years ago was appropriate. I see the evolution of the law becoming dystopian and horrific.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. We'll be right back. A few phone lines for the first time this morning. Very busy. Really, really interesting calls this morning. Very, 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 very interesting calls. Very insightful. Rob Snow Show, City News.
That same old train that brought me here's gonna carry me away again. Darling, you can't love one. Darling, you can't love one. You can't love one. You still have fun. Darling, you can't love one. I'm riding on that new river train.
Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
10:50. Let's see if we can get to all these calls here on the Talkback Hour. We're talking about MAID, medical assistance in dying. Thanks for taking part in the discussion this morning, by the way. I wasn't sure if anybody would even call me on this topic. It's just some stories I like the callers. I read them and I wonder what's happening. What's happening, you know? Albert in Canada. Albert.
Good morning, Rob.
Under what circumstances should someone be allowed to have medical assistance in dying?
Well, the most important thing is the mental capacity of the person to make that decision. And I can tell you firsthand that if a person has no hope for any cure and is terminal and is suffering and is mentally stable, that person should have the right to end his life.
Sure.
Okay, now, I'll tell you, on my second operation, I was in the hospital. I had 3 patients in the room. 2 of them passed away on me within days. And the third one, a man is in his 70s. Every day he asked the nurse for the needle. He wanted to die there and then. And they brought in the social workers to work with him. And I have to tell you, I really wasn't too thrilled what I was hearing from the social workers. They were pretty rough on the guy. But he had a wife and he had a daughter. And they both couldn't come and see him because of COVID. So when they finally put the security guard in the room with him, and he was adamant that he wanted to die, they opened up the door to have the daughter and the wife come in to see him. And I had the chance to speak to him. And he was in worse condition than I was. He couldn't get out of his bed at all. And he was probably about 75 years old. But he looked like a man that lived life well. And I spoke to him and I said to him, you know, you have your daughter, you have your wife. I said, think it out. I said, I know you're depressed because of what you're going through, and that's the key there. When you're in a situation that's terminal, depending on I hope you come to understand what I'm saying here, depending on how high your life was, if you lived a good life and you achieved a lot, and then that drop was massive, your chances of going into depression are much more. And so, you know, a person that really is suffering really should have the right to end it. But he's got to be shown. It's got to be shown.
Yeah. Reasonably foreseeable. The language used to be reasonably foreseeable, that the death had to be reasonably foreseeable.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
I mean, why?
But now, what? I'm sorry, Albert. I hate to interrupt you, but I have some other people I have to get to. But just let me ask you: what about people who are like saying, "I'm poor. I have no quality of life."
That's right.
They're not even. I mean, they're sick, but they would do better if they had proper mental health, or they would do better if they had more money, or
you know what? Those are things that we can help people with.
We can help people.
I have a brother that's mentally ill, and the last thing I would want him to do was make a decision on him ending his life.
Okay.
He's been in the system since he was 25 years old. He's 60, but he's never mentioned anything about ending his life.
Okay.
But if he was to go that route, I would try to get him the best quality care for mental health.
Better mental health care. Yes, better mental health care. Supports.
And his living conditions are extremely poor, Rob.
Okay.
He lives on ODSP.
There you go.
$960 a month.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Albert. I'm just running really tight on time here. Gloria in Ottawa. Hi, Gloria.
Yes, hello, Rob.
Hi, Gloria.
Yes, I've also had personal experience with a loved one in MAID.
Okay.
And you live with a certain amount, apart from the grief, you live with a certain amount of responsibility that's left over. I'm glad that my loved one had the help that he desperately needed. It was far easier than what the natural outcome might have been. Every day was a struggle for him and for me, but for him particularly, a desperate struggle just to breathe. So, you know, people do feel a certain amount of guilt, even though they have no choice, even though they have no say. It's a bit like a sudden death, in that, you know, people think, what could I have done? What should I have done? And I think a lot of these relatives are feeling that.
Okay.
And
I don't want to get too personal, but
no.
was the death reasonably foreseeable at the time?
Oh, yes.
It was, right?
It would have, I mean, given time, I mean, you know, yes. We all die. I mean, that's the fact of living.
Sure.
But, you know, there's a suicide is an awful thing. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who've taken that route. And a suicide is a do-it-yourself job, and I can't imagine how much pain, suffering, grief, and whatever else they and their families go through after such an event.
See, some of us are just kind of worried that maybe the law, because 7 years ago this was all totally prohibited, just 7 years ago.
Yes, I know.
If it's moving too fast and maybe becoming too permissive.
Well, you know, you do have to remember that I think the law as it is written now is pretty good. Anybody who wants to commit suicide and is desperate enough will do it. A lot of people talk about it. It is a very serious situation, and sometimes it's just a question.
Right, but here
of
we're really
finding...
talking about the government blessing a medical practitioner to help you do it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Gloria.
no,
Okay,
I'm not so sure. And I think people nowadays, there's so much information people can get on the internet or through different sources. I'm sure if they had a mind to do it, they would do it. But talking about doing it and actually doing it, no, they're two entirely separate things.
Okay, Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful calls. Wonderful calls for the hour. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, the Talkback Hour, if you did not get on today, you can call tomorrow. We can get right back into this topic or any other topic because it's the Friday Free-for-All Tomorrow Talkback Hour after the 10 o'clock news. Ron Corbett, my good friend, Ron Corbett, former radio colleague, longtime columnist, best-selling author. He has a new book out now in a sparkling review in, of all places, the New York Times review of books. Can you imagine? And he is also going to be at the EY Center with his book, and he represents publishes a number of other Ottawa authors. So we'll tell you all about that right after the news on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 5th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ontario Liberals promising to cap class sizes at 20 students in elementary school. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says to achieve the hard cap, they would hire 10,000 more teachers, recruiting some from other provinces, but helping qualified teachers immigrate to Ontario as well.
Again, I want to stress a hard cap of 20. So that students and their teachers can connect with one another, so that students can be taught, but so that the teachers can also reach the students.
As well, the Liberals are promising to end the mandatory graduation requirement for 2 online credits that was introduced by the PC government. Also on the Ontario election campaign trail, the NDP promising free or low-cost dental care for low- and middle-income families. Leader Andrea Horwath says her party plan would be in place before the dental coverage promised by the federal government is fully developed.
It's something I'm totally committed to. That's why I started talking about it far before the federal government made their announcement. It is something I think is extremely important. Look, why do we know that health care for the rest of our bodies is important, but somehow we leave out the mouth? It doesn't make any sense.
Now, Horwath says once the national program promised is up and running, the provincial plan would simply mesh with it. City News time 11:02. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
No weather concerns for us today. We're in for a lovely day. Lots of sunshine. The high 18 degrees. Tonight partly cloudy down to 6, and tomorrow sun and cloud about 17. 17 is the average high. For today, the high 18.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees. City News time 11:02. Another 32 deaths from COVID-19 in Ontario today. That has brought the overall death rate in Ontario to just under 13,000 people. Now, the World Health Organization has released its latest estimate. It feels nearly 15 million people have died either from COVID or from the impact on an overwhelmed health system just in the past 2 years.
The WHO estimate comes from a report which prompted the UN agency's chief to urge countries to invest more in their capacities to quell future health emergencies. The figure is nearly double the official toll of 6 million dead. Most of the fatalities were in Southeast Asia and the Americas. The figures are based on country-reported data and statistical modelling. The WHO did not immediately break down the figures to distinguish between direct deaths from COVID-19 and others caused by the pandemic. I'm Karen Chamas.
City News time 11:03. The federal government is calling for calm in the Commons following accusations the Prime Minister yelled the F word during question period. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
You can't hear the alleged swear word in the broadcast of question period, but that was around the moment when unparliamentary language may have been used by the Prime Minister. Government House Leader Mark Holland is hoping for a more civil tone today.
I'm expecting things to be more even. Yesterday was a very emotional day.
Neither Holland nor the Prime Minister's office will confirm or deny if an F-bomb was dropped, but Conservative John Brassard insists it clearly came from Justin Trudeau and was directed at their benches.
I can tell you what I heard and what my colleagues heard, and it wasn't fuddle-duddle.
The Conservatives have asked the Speaker to look into it and address the matter. The House Speaker's office tells me if he does come back with a ruling today, it would likely come before question period. The F word is one of many words considered unparliamentary. Generally, if a ruling finds bad words were used, the MP in question apologizes and the matter is settled. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Now, decades ago, fuddle-duddle is what Justin's father, Pierre, said. He said in the comments. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Today at the EY Center, it's the Signatures Originals Spring Craft Sale. And I know what that means. It means local authors will be there. They'll be signing books, and it's been a long time coming. I know they're looking forward to it. And I'm really pleased to be joined today from Ottawa Press and Publishing, Ron Corbett. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Rob.
Signature's original spring craft sale. What's it like to have that back?
First one in 3 years. By the way, if anybody's still pandemic counting out there, it's well, we're going to see. We were setting up yesterday that the spring show, the original, the Signature show, it's a tradition in Ottawa. It started in Ottawa. This is a local business success story, the Signature shows. The Christmas one came back last year, and it was a blast. I was on the show talking to you about that, Rob, and it's just a blast seeing people out again, authors getting a chance to have book signings. That was our first book signing last Christmas in a couple years. The spring show just got caught up with all the lockdowns, so there hasn't been one in 3 years. This is the first one since 2019. A lot of excited people down there yesterday getting ready for the show. It starts today.
Okay. So from your point of view, as the head of Ottawa Press and Publishing, you publish so many...
You're trying to figure out what to call me.
I didn't know. CEO, President. I'll just call him Ron from Ottawa Press and Publishing. You know Ron, Ron, right? Used to be on the radio, write columns for the newspaper. Ron Corbett. You publish so many local authors, so who's going to be there pitching their wares?
We've got a good lot. Phil Jenkins is going to be there on Sunday. The show, by the way, runs today and until Sunday. I won't give you the times. I'll get them wrong. But, if you look at the times, runs through Sunday. On Sunday, Phil Jenkins is in for a book signing. Phil has written what I still think is one of my favorite nonfiction books about Ottawa, An Acre of Time. I think you're familiar with that book too, Rob. He took an acre of land on LeBreton Flats and told the history of the land, going back to before the Ice Age. So everything that happened on that acre. Now, he picked a very busy acre of land. He cheated a bit. But so it's the history of that acre of land. It's called An Acre of Time. Wonderful, wonderful book. Phil is going to be there on Sunday for a book signing. Time is 10 to 12 on that. We have mystery writers dropping by. Mike Martin, he has a series that we published, the Sergeant Windflower Mystery Series. He's a Newfie. I can't say that. He's a Newfoundlander.
Newfoundlander, okay.
Newfoundlander.
Okay. Yeah.
Mike's a displaced Newfoundlander. He's lived in Ottawa for years. A lot of fans. Mike's there tonight. Mike's there for a signing tonight. I think he's there at 6 to 8 tonight. John Owens, you may know John Owens. He used to be the communications director at the Ottawa Senators. He's another one of our mystery writers. He has a series going, the Jake Lydon Mystery. He's there tomorrow night, and I'm there on Saturday, Rob, signing a few books. I have a couple new books out myself, and I'm there on Saturday, 10 to 12.
Well, you're being too modest. I have a few books out. Ron has a book, A Sweet Hello to the Sweet Goodbye.
The title of the book is The Sweet Goodbye. Yeah.
The Sweet Goodbye. The Sweet Goodbye. So this must be the headline in, of all places, the New York Times Book Review. The New York Times Book Review reviewed your latest book. Quote, Ron Corbett's dynamite new series debut has a snappy voice. The action is perfectly paced, and it brims with heart and grit. Always a winning combination. From the opening line. Wow. Holy smoke. You're in the New York Times Book Review, Ron Corbett. How does that feel? I mean,
it felt like a fantasy. I felt like Bobby in Dallas. That's dated me. Yeah, it was all. I got the fantasy review. Yeah, the Sweet Goodbye. And thank you for mentioning it, Rob. It's a brand new series I'm starting. The book is published in the States, Penguin in the States, Berkeley, an imprint of Penguin. So the book's only been out 2 weeks, and I wasn't expecting it when it was released. It got a New York Times book review and a Publishers Weekly. You've got part of a Publishers Weekly review in there. They both came out the same week, so yeah, that was a good week, Rob. Thanks for mentioning it. Very excited about the book. And we do have some copies of that book. It's, as I said, just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's not widely distributed, and we'll have some copies of that book at the show as well.
Right. I'm just on Ottawa Press and Publishing right now. Andrew King. On your website right now, you could get a signed Andrew King print with each purchase. So that would be pretty cool as well.
That's always popular. Right? Andrew is just a fun artist. People, if anyone not familiar with Andrew's work, he's one of my favorite artists, local guy. Lives not far from me, actually. He's getting ready for a show. He's also a history buff. He just loves local history like so many people in Ottawa do. We have 2 of his books, Ottawa Rewind, and they're history mysteries. Andrew will go out and try to solve a mystery. Where was Ottawa's first bar? Where was Ottawa's, there's an alcohol theme every once in a while. And we published 2 of his books. You purchase one of his books at the show, you get a signed postcard print. I've seen people buy those books just to get the print. As a publisher, I don't like that too much, but you have bought the book.
No, and we've had Laura Byrne-Paquette on as well. We've had her on the show before, and her book, Ottawa Road Trips, is really good, right?
Thank you for mentioning that, because we spent a lot of work this winter making sure that we had Laura's sequel ready for the show, and we do have it ready for the show. So the sequel to Ottawa Road Trips, last year was called Your 100-Kilometer Getaway Guide. It was like a day tripping guide. This year it's Your Weekender Guide. So brand new book, brand new locations. The first book didn't go past 100 kilometers. This book goes from 100 to 400. So where to go for a weekend, for an overnight. It's called Ottawa Road Trips, Your Weekend Getaway Guide. That book is available at the show. Just came out.
Excellent. Is it true that they have turned The Last Guide into a CBC series? Is that right?
That's a great story. I should give a plug out to Christian Gold. 3-4 years ago, some York University students approached me. They were doing a class project, Rob.
Yeah.
Their senior year project. They were doing a documentary. They'd read my book, The Last Guide. Those guys have been working on this ever since they came to my house 3-4 years ago. Wow. They started off as a class project. They sold it to the CBC. It went on CBC Gem about a month ago, and it is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work they did on Frank Kwiak, who passed away last year. So I'm getting misty every time I still say it. It's hard to believe he passed away. But he passed away last year, and they've just done a beautiful documentary on the last of the old-time fishing guides in Algonquin Park. The last guide, his name was Frank Kwiak. And if you haven't seen the documentary, see it. The guys did a wonderful job on it.
Well, Ron, it's so great to have, first of all, these kinds of shows back, and an opportunity for authors to meet their readers, which I know the authors really love. So,
they love it. I saw Phil last night. Everybody's pumped to see some people again. Yes.
Yeah. Enjoy it. Thanks for taking the time for us today, Ron. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on. Have a great day.
Yep. That's from Ottawa Press and Publishing. That's Ron Corbett.
Riding requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The Maritime provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered. And so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks, and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Just before we get to our next guest, I want to give you the latest on the markets. Because there is a significant sell-off that is happening right now on the markets, on the stock markets. We have, right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down. I have it in front of me here on the television screen. It says it's down 970 points. So that's a loss of almost 3%. For the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So then you have the TSX is also down, and that's despite oil prices being higher today. Oil prices are at a 6-week high of $108 a barrel U.S. West Texas futures. The TSX down almost 450 points, so that's a loss of about 2% for the TSX. NASDAQ tech shares have had a terrible start to the year, and it's not any better today. The NASDAQ is down, let me see here, 550 points. So that's a more than 4% decline. And the S&P 500 is also lower, down 133 points. And Bitcoins are down 38,170. And that's about all I have right now. But that's something that we'll be watching. Oh, I should say Shopify. A lot of people interested in Shopify, of course, the Ottawa technology company. And this is the TSX quote. Shopify right now is down 16%. It's at $514 a share, give or take. But earlier in the session today, the stock hit a 52-week low for Shopify of $505. It's bounced off that 52-week low, and it's great. Been a great long-term hold, but it's been brutal if you bought it at the top. It is down year to date, down 67%, and year over year, Shopify shares are down 62%. And it's kind of counterintuitive with the economy reopening. More people going back to brick and mortar shopping. Fewer people are doing online shopping and opening online Shopify stores. They're still growing, but their growth is slowing, and they're being punished for it on the stock market. $514 a share right now, Canadian, on Shopify. So just to bring you up to date on that, 11:19 on the Rob Snow Show here on City News. Tough day for the stock market, tough day for Shopify, and sales are slowing in the Ottawa real estate market, according to the latest numbers from the Ottawa Real Estate Board. And we have the president of the Ottawa Real Estate Board on with us right now. Penny Toronto, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Good.
How would you describe the housing market in Ottawa?
I would describe it as fluid. You know, it's perhaps, you know, starting to show a little bit of a turning point where we can't say yet. You know, the April stats don't make a trend. We have to see what happens in the next month or two to see if this is, you know, going to continue. But, you know, there's some measures that are being taken that could be, you know, changing people's purchasing power. You know, the interest rate hikes and some of the measurements that the government's taking to curb inflation could be affecting buyers. But in the meantime, it's still a great time to sell, and prices are still moving, and, you know, the market is still good.
Market is still good and still slightly above the 5-year average, right? So
Yeah, but the last couple of years, you know, were really an anomaly, and we're, you know, really exceptional. So now maybe we're going to return to some more stabilizing of the increases and just, you know, back to a little bit more slower acceleration.
Okay, yeah, because it got pretty frothy there for a while, right? So,
yeah, well, we haven't seen the likes of that, you know, really ever in Ottawa, right?
Yeah. How would you describe the supply-demand equation right now?
There's still a problem. There's still a really, you know, heavy demand. There's still multiple offers in lots of pockets in the city. There's still a lot of buyers out there trying to get into the market. So it's still a supply issue. We still need, you know, more properties on the market, and it's still a great time to sell.
Okay. When something is listed, especially in some of the, you know, like mature, desirable neighborhoods, what have you, how long are those properties routinely on the market, would you say?
Well,
days on market?
Well, you know, a lot of the neighborhoods we're showing about, you know, an average of 10 days on the market. And I'm not sure that that's so accurate because, you know, there's still a lot of listings being put on the market when the offers are held off, you know, for a week or so. So perhaps those listings may have sold even faster. But there's about 0.9 months of inventory right now in the Ottawa area, which has increased a little bit from in March it was 0.6 months. So it still, you know, takes about 90 to 120 days to make a balanced market. Okay. So it's still definitely a seller's market.
Still a seller's market. Okay. Year-to-date average sale price, $830,000 for a residential property. Now, residential property can include all kinds of properties, right?
It does. It includes townhome singles. It takes the highest price and takes the lowest price and it averages it out, right? So, you know, there's a lot of different variables in there.
Yeah. So that's up 13% year to date. Over 2021. So over last year. Yeah. And 469.6 for condos, up 12%. Compared to this time last year.
Yeah. So like I say, they're still moving. Yeah. Prices are still moving. They're still, you know, going, you know, they're still on the upward trend, but maybe perhaps not as much. You know, we're not seeing 21% increases, which is a good sign for buyers.
Right. But nevertheless, the sales volume is certainly slowed, though, right? You would say it's slowed, right?
It appears to be slowing, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in Toronto, the number of sales was down 27%.
Yeah, they've got a higher decrease. We'll stick with Ottawa. You know, Ottawa's decrease, but and again, you know, it could be, you know, it was a colder April. Mm-hmm. You know, again, there's some buyer frustration out there. Some people stepping out of the market because they're just getting too frustrated on losing, you know, in bidding wars. So we'll have to see. Like May will tell a better picture. If the trend continues, then we could try to make more blanket statements about what's happening.
Okay. Yeah. This time of year, I mean, here we are, Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo, by the way, May 5th.
Yeah, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Okay, so this time of year, is this really kind of gearing up for it now? Is this going to be the red hot time?
We should be now in the thick of the spring market. We're in May.
Yeah.
So, you know, perhaps, like I said, the cooler temperature in April maybe slowed us down a month, but, you know, we should be now getting into definitely the thick of the spring market.
Yeah. I guess one of the issues, I know you say it's a seller's market, is if you sell and you get your price or even above your price, where do you go? Right, Penny? Right, that's the thing, right?
Well, and that's part of the issue, right?
Yeah.
So some people may be holding back because they just can't make sense of the trade-off. And so they just can't make sense of, getting out of their large home for X dollars and moving into a smaller place that's, even close to the same price or, a little bit lower. And so they have to, wrap their heads around what they're trading for.
Okay. I found this interesting that it's just on rentals, average one bedroom, $1,850, two bedroom, $2,200, up about 3 to 4% compared to this time last year. I didn't know real estate agents. I never used a real estate agent to find an apartment. I usually just go to apartment listings or something right? Like who does that? Who does that?
Every day.
Who does that?
Well, agents, realtors, deal with lots of rentals. People put their properties on MLS, and investors use realtors to rent their properties out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We do quite a bit of rentals, and we do more and more than we used to, because don't forget our feeds go to all sorts of websites that increase the exposure.
Okay.
So realtors are a great asset for renting out a property.
Oh, there you go. So if I have an investment property or what have you, can use
Call
an agent
realtor.
to. Okay. All right. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Plus, they have a lot of connections, and and a lot of realtors have clients that are looking for rentals.
Well, certainly that's a pretty tight market too, the rental market, and has been for many, many years. But they're building more rentals now anyway, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with the vacancy rates and all of that.
Okay, so you're kind of all in all, what I'm getting, Penny, is it's kind of wait and see right now, right? With mortgage rates being where they are and interest rates being where they are, just everybody's kind of like waiting. Let's wait and see what happens here.
Yeah, we have to see if some of these measures actually really affect the market. And, like I said, 1 month doesn't make a trend, but if it's, if it continues this way, then we can kind of see what's going to happen.
Okay. Hey, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Really great to hear from you. Bye-bye.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Penny Toronto on the road, out and about today with the latest on the real estate market. Just a reminder, we will have comprehensive business updates from our business team here at City News for you all afternoon going into the closing bell, okay? We see this sometimes, big sell-off, especially recently, big sell-off before they call it quits for lunch. And then what can happen is by 4 o'clock, the markets could be up. I mean, they've been incredibly volatile lately. We have seen these big swings before, but right now, deep in the red. Dow down 3%, down almost 1,000 points. But it's a 33,000 Dow right now, so down 3%. NASDAQ down 4%. That's a loss of about 460 points. TSX down 2%, down 450 points. S&P 500, the broader market, the real benchmark for the stock market, down 3%. Canadian dollar is under 78 cents U.S. Can you imagine? 77-cent dollar with $108 oil? That is so weird. And gas, we are told by our gas price experts, gas in Ottawa tomorrow will be $1.95 a liter. That would be a new record. This is the Rob Snow Show. Anybody got any money? This is City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 5th. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, nice sunny skies, 11 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. The Liberals and New Democrats are out with provincial promises today as the march toward the June 2nd provincial election continues. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says his party would cap class sizes in elementary schools to 20 students and hire another 10,000 teachers from across the country. NDP leader Andrea Horwath says there will be a provincial dental care program for low and middle income families, covering the cost for families that make up to $90,000 a year and a sliding scale of costs for families that make over that amount. Another 32 deaths from COVID happened in Ontario today, bringing the overall death rate in Ontario to just under 13,000. The World Health Organization is out with a new worldwide estimate. It feels nearly 15 million people have died either from COVID-19 or from its impact on overwhelmed health systems in the past 2 years. Shopify says it's signed a deal to buy logistics company Deliver in a deal valued at about $2.1 billion US. Under the agreement, Ottawa-based Shopify will pay about 80% of the purchase price in cash and 20% in Shopify shares. This comes as the company reports its slowest quarterly revenue growth in 7 years, showing a big miss on profit, sending the company's US shares down 15%. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's time for our look at international news. It's called The World with Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, Rob.
It's great to have you back again this week.
Good to be with
the
you.
fight for Mariupol. The Avostal Steel Works is the last stronghold of resistance there. And taking that southern port city is a key goal, clearly, for Russia. Why?
We are dealing now with Mr. Putin's Plan B. Plan A, as we know, was foiled. That was to have a lightning strike against the capital, occupy the whole country, and that didn't work. Now they're moving on to Plan B, which I believe is a very, very serious one. They plan to basically seize the entire eastern part of the country, stretching down, further consolidating in the Donbass, then stretching downward and making a land bridge all the way to Crimea, and maybe even then moving on to Moldova, the strip of Moldova. Mariupol is a key link in all this because it has to be conquered in order to make that land bridge possible, in order to take the entire breakaway of the eastern region possible. And I think that's the first critical goal. But it's also, Rob, it's a major port. It's one of Ukraine's major ports. Russians are also blockading Odessa after the sinking of Moscow by the Ukrainians.
Yes.
They just moved farther out so they can't get more ships sunk. So right now, Ukraine can't get things into the country or out of the country by sea, and I think that's an important reason. And I think, thirdly, it's just showing a very effective use of a terror campaign. This is how they're taking this. They're showing everybody in Ukraine, this is how we will occupy your country. Troops and material have been tied up ever since the beginning of this campaign, trying to capture this last stronghold. And if it falls, or when it falls, if and when it falls, then a lot of troops are going to be freed up to move either farther south or to move back into other directions toward the west.
And it's been brutal and indiscriminate. Wouldn't you agree? Indiscriminate?
Well, it's deliberately discriminate in a sense. I mean, that's why I've called it a terror campaign. Yes, it is indiscriminate. They just have been shelling things, but that's a deliberate choice. The choice was made to basically turn a city of 400,000 into a wasteland, and that's what they're doing. It's a terrible humanitarian cost, And of course, a lot of wars against crimes against humanity are involved as well.
Okay. Let's talk about red lines. Red lines. There's a member of the House of Representatives in the United States, a Republican from Illinois. He has introduced what's known as an authorization for use of military force resolution. Now, it's just a resolution. If passed, would authorize U.S. President Joe Biden to utilize U.S. forces to defend Ukraine. Boots on the ground.
Yep.
If Russia uses chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons against Ukraine. Meantime, the former president of Ukraine, Poroshenko, urged Canada to get behind the resolution. In an interview, he said, "I definitely need support of this initiative from the Canadian parliamentarians and the Canadian government." What do you think, first of all, of the resolution and the potential for Canadian participation? What do you think about all of this?
Well, we should, off the top, say what this is. This authorization is required for the U.S. president to actually use troops abroad.
Okay.
So that, this would authorize the use of American forces in a foreign conflict. Without that, the authority to do so would not be there. So it's a very important step. Let's link our two stories that we're talking about. Mariupol is indeed so far still holding out. It's been a thorn in the side of the Russian advance. The simplest way to deal with Mariupol by the Russians is to violate the laws of war using either chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons to go down into those tunnels underneath the steel mill and into those bunkers. That, of course, is definitely war crimes. All the other war crimes are currently being documented, but it would be a major advance into how Mr. Putin would conduct this war if that should happen.
Okay. So do you see this, just so I understand here?
Sure.
And it's called an AUMF, Authorization for Use of Military Force.
Right.
Do you see that? Should we interpret that as, is that an escalation then?
What?
Is it an escalation then?
Mm-hmm. It is an escalation in the sense that it was presented by the representative, and he's a very special representative. He's the Republican who has been opposing Trump, and we can talk about. I think that's one reason why this might not pass. I can't see Republicans supporting anything that he puts forward, even on something as important as this. But
Kinzinger. Yeah.
Kinzinger is not running for re-election. He served. He's a soldier. He served in Afghanistan and I think in Iraq. What we have, I think, is, in his view, and I think correctly, is indeed a raising of the stakes, just as you've asked it, but he wants to do it as a deterrent, saying to Russia that there are red lines, you cannot cross those red lines, and if you do, then you will indeed face direct military confrontation with America and presumably with America's allies. Guess who that includes? That's us.
Yes.
So we would... What about Canada? Canada may not have to respond at all to the request by Poroshenko in response to this new opening because it may not pass, and therefore Canada can just duck out of it.
Right.
So I think that's one thing we should keep in mind as we look at this. But the big question that it raises is this one. When does the Ukraine crisis become worth a direct confrontation with Russia and therefore World War III?
Right.
That has been on the table since the start of this conflict. We are at a different stage of it right now. We've seen the atrocities and the realigning of certainly Western-led, and not just Western, but Western-led realization as to what's at stake in Ukraine. I think is the success of Ukraine in fighting off the initial Plan A has really changed the ball game, and now everybody's all in on both sides. All in means that Mr. Putin can't afford to lose, and we can't afford to let him win. This authorization of the use of force is one component of that.
Okay. So let's move on to diplomacy and the world of diplomats. The Canadian Embassy in Ukraine, like many other embassies there, was relocated to Poland. Families of diplomatic staff were evacuated on January 25th, followed by non-essential staff January 30th. Diplomatic representatives from most Western countries fled Ukraine as the war started. More than 24 have gone back. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says Canada's ambassador to Ukraine will return to the country as soon as it is safe to do so. What do you think should happen with this embassy?
I think we should open it when it's safe.
Okay.
I mean, this is a genuine concern. Let's again put this in the broader context of how we got to where we are today. This is the tripwire when all of the embassies reopen and cluster, and when many embassies reopen, including ours at some point, cluster in the capital city. This is the tripwire that democracies can put in place that we refused to put in place before the invasion. The hope is that if there's enough embassies there, that Russia will stop just randomly sending missiles into the capital city. We'll have to avoid killing foreigners in sufficient numbers so that it will at least keep the capital city safer. And I think that's it. But remember, we had this option before. You and I have talked about this. We had Operation Unifier there that Canada was involved in training along with, separately, but in coordination with the United Kingdom and the U.S., training troops, not as a NATO exercise, but on a bilateral basis. And we trained something like 33,000 of those troops who have turned out to be really effective in defeating the Russians as they've tried to invade. There was also separately, in the Baltics, Operation Resolve, which we took part in and still are taking part in. This is a NATO exercise saying we are putting tripwire troops all across the Baltics. You'll have to have, if you want to come into their Russia, you're tripping over all of us, and you have to keep that in mind, so don't do it. Had we put that tripwire in place before the buildup, you and I have talked about this, it's entirely possible that Mr. Putin would have had to recalculate whether it was worth invading Ukraine. But now, having foregone that, this is kind of a backup tripwire. We have increased our, along with everyone else, not everyone else, along with the other Western Alliance friends, we have increased the stakes in Ukraine now for the Russians, and we're doing so by putting bodies on the line, not troops, but diplomats.
Okay. One more thing before we stop here.
Sure.
Many high-profile visitors have made trips to Ukraine, 11 prime ministers. One recalls Boris Johnson going, Austria's chancellor, U.S. Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of Defense. Joe Biden hasn't been there, but the House Speaker has been there, Nancy Pelosi, UN Secretary General. Canada has not even sent a cabinet minister. The suggestion has been made this has not gone unnoticed in that country, and Canada should send someone. The obvious choice, if not the prime minister, you would think would be the deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland. She speaks the language, has the heritage. What do you think of such a suggestion?
Well, a couple things. I think stay tuned. I suspect this is in the works. It just hasn't happened yet. It's important that there's been high-level delegations. Many of them have gone there. Nancy Pelosi, you mentioned, she's third in line to be U.S. president, and she took a number of senior people with her from from Congress. So that was very important. It's very important for the outside world to show demonstrably, by being there, support so that Ukraine is not being shown to stand alone. So all of this is messaging saying, we are there with you, we're there to support you, you do not stand alone against Russia. I think that's really very good. What about us? Well, as I say, I think stay tuned. I suspect things are in the work. But, Rob, look at this. At what point does having this stream of visitors go from being, after you've had a number of them, and as embassies start to reopen, when does this start to be a burden on Ukraine? Mm-hmm. They all have to meet the president. They all have to meet all the senior people. Ukraine's busy right now.
Yeah, all of this planning has to take place, security arrangements made, all of this other stuff when they're fighting for their lives. Right?
Exactly. So
understand.
Good. I think we'll probably take part in it at some point, but they do have other things to look after besides visiting dignitaries.
Okay. We'll be right back with part 2 of The World with Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Welcome to the Ottawa Civic Centre as we get set for what could be an historical moment in 67's history. Musselman gets hammered by Bickle. Wrist shot deflected, scores! Brian Bickle makes it 1-0 Ottawa.
Brian Bickle, a future premier power forward in the league, the rookie. Watch what he does. Big hit, then goes to the net and tips this one home off the stick. Whitmarsh with no chance on the deflection.
Up through center, Shepard with Foy racing for the front. Nice move by Foy. Beautiful. Scores! Second effort, Matt Foy, 2-0 Ottawa.
It's the second effort for Matt Foy that gets his 60th goal, milestone goal of the year. He and Corey Locke now both in 60, the first 2 players of the season in the OHL to do it, and it's textbook Foy going to the net, and look at the second effort, a goal scorer's goal with his own rebound, and Ottawa takes a 2-0 lead.
Bickle in on Poulin, and he runs into Poulin, runs him right over center and front, and McAllis couldn't find the handle. Loose puck, another save, and finally whistled down.
There's a penalty shot. There's a penalty shot for the 67s. Watch what happens here. Big hit. Look at Bickle.
That's what
wow,
started
he's
it.
having a great game, I tell you. Comes out in front, then there's the puck. All of a sudden loose. It hits a skate, and right there on the top, the player kneeling over. We can't get that number. He's standing up right. That's Chaumont. It's Chaumont. He's got the puck in his right hand, number 22.
And here we go, Albiani. Scores! 3-1 Ottawa. Long pass up to Rodney Ballman. He's got Dickinson. Here's Dickinson. Break, scores! Lou Dickinson restores the 2-goal lead.
How fitting could it be that the Ottawa native, Lou Dickinson, could very well seal the victory for Brian Kilrea's 1,000th, the 9th pass from Rodney Bauman, and the overage Dickinson makes no mistake, going underneath the blocker above the goal pad.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed history. Brian Kilrea wins 1,000.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
We're back with part 2 of The World, our weekly look at international news with the help of Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. So I'll read you a little bit from the Guardian newspaper to the UK this morning and get your insight into it here, Professor. Here we go. Quote, concerned about sweeping Russia-style sanctions from the West, Beijing has ordered a comprehensive stress test to study the implications of a similar scenario for its economy, the Guardian has learned. An extensive exercise began around late February and early March when Western allies imposed unprecedented sanctions against Moscow. Several key Chinese government agencies, from banking regulation to international trade, have been asked to come up with responses if the West imposed the same embargoes on China. What do you think of that story?
Well, let's start at the top here, that the role of China has been the big question mark all along in terms of this crisis as it evolved. China can be very, very helpful to Russia, or with the West and the rest of the world looking on, they can be constrained in what they do. Would they supply military, actual military equipment and reinforcements? What do they think of all this invasion, and what are they going to do, keeping in mind they are a far bigger power than Russia economically as well as militarily. So the role of China is a big question mark. And the very first thing I think we should remind ourselves is that China has been the biggest beneficiary of this attack by Putin on Ukraine.
Okay.
The world was organizing to deal with an emergent China and a truculent China, a wolf warrior China. NATO had put it into its documents. China had come into focus, and we had a role to play in that because after the two Michaels incident, we used our multilateral strength to focus attention on their bad behavior globally. So we have to say that, boy, did they get off the hook on this. Now we're all talking about Russia, and we're not talking about China very much at all. So I think that's the first point to make.
Okay.
The second, I think, is that, yes, they are very wise indeed to look at their own situation, the stress test. Russia was made a pariah state, Rob, in 8 days. Not completely, but the rapidity with which Russia had gone from being a player you really can't do without, even if you might not like them very much, to being we cannot deal with these people because look how they behave. Now, it might take more than 8 days to deal with China because they're so much bigger and more enmeshed in the global economy. But I think that one of the things they had to learn immediately is, hey, this could happen to us. So this stress test is smart on their part.
Okay.
I've got more to say on that
one. Go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going. Yeah. Yes.
On February 4th, in the build-up to this invasion by Russia, the germaphobe Mr. Putin actually left Moscow and went to meet another leader who had been isolating himself due to COVID, and that's Xi Jinping. And they, just before the invasion, had a very long document that they agreed on, where this was going to be an alliance with no borders, no ends, so that in any way going forward, and there was an immediate result of that, because China signed another major set of agreements about importing oil and gas. So what that meant was that it looked at the start of the war that China would offer basically a back door to escape sanctions. But now they have their own question of sanctions, as you have correctly pointed out. That was a good catch there. So what we find is that they now have to say, what would happen to us if we did something? And you have asked the question, what would it take?
Yeah, like what kind of something? Like Taiwan would be the obvious one, right? So
the very first is, before the Taiwan question, is what about their own big companies running afoul of sanctions because they are globally involved. And they have now been cutting back. Their own big companies, their own commerce has already been affected. They have already been cutting back on what they are willing to do.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what started the whole two Michaels Meng Wanzhou thing in the first place, was because Huawei was accused of violating U.S. sanctions against Iran. So
good, a good reminder.
Yeah.
And sometime, by the way, we should talk about Iran, because if really the world needs to have lower oil prices in order to cripple, two things, Russia and inflation at home, then Iran is a possible player there. So we should deal with that at some point. But right now we have a situation with what would trigger, why is China worried? But they're worried, first of all, that the sanctions might affect them. And it's happening domestically in that their own companies are pulling back, re-examining, not doing new deals. But also foreign companies are now saying maybe we don't want to deal with China, because look at the turmoil there. They've got COVID and zero COVID. There's a lot of volatility, and there's the case of the Russian related sanctions, so we have to be cautious. So on the one hand, on the first point, yes, they have to be concerned about sanctions. But as you raised, the big ticket item for them is, what about Taiwan? And here we have the big question we keep asking, what lesson will, looking outward, when China sees what's happening with Russia, what lessons are they learning? Here's Taiwan's response, and I think we've talked about this. Taiwan immediately and repeatedly has been saying what the Chinese have learned since Xi Jinping has made it very clear that the reincorporation, in his mind, the incorporation of Taiwan into China is on his to-do list before he leaves office. At some point, he says it's going to happen. Taiwan has said, look what happens. If you invade us, look what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. They really got chewed up by the local population rising up, and so you better learn that lesson. The other possibility is that China has learned if you brandish the nuclear option, you can do almost anything and get away with it. So what lessons are being learned in regard to Taiwan? The possibility exists very much that Taiwan will become prominent in world politics in the near-term future. There is there's an expanding, truculent China has Taiwan as its number one concern. They also want to push America out of the whole region, and they're working on that. So Canada, to remind ourselves, is involved in this, not only in the way you just mentioned correctly, but we join in American exercises, Western exercises, in showing that the Taiwan Strait has to be kept open. It's international waters, and we send our frigates there, sometimes in concert with the U.S. So we are ourselves involved with that big question that you've raised. Okay. What about China? I'm very concerned about Taiwan.
We're asking ourselves that every week, aren't we, Professor? What about China? What about China? Okay. Thank you again for this week. We'll pick things up next week.
Indeed.
Yes. Professor Elliot Tepper, that's the world this week. This is the Rob Snow Show. We're back tomorrow after the 9 o'clock news, Friday free for all after the 10 o'clock news. Derek Fage again in for Sam LaPrade on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by